Hello, everybody out there. How are you doing? This is Robert Price coming live with Elite Minds LLC. This is directly for our Calvary family because one of the things that I wanted to at least kind of get the ball rolling with is the fact that Calvary Athletics has decided to partner with Elite Minds LLC and Robert Price here to really provide an additional opportunity for their student athletes to really start to work on their mental game. And to really feel prepared in all fields of human endeavor, everything that it is that they do. So today or tonight, essentially, I will be able to just kind of walk you through a little bit about how I do what I do, why I do it, and how I think that's going to be beneficial to the student athletes at Calvary. Not only the kids that are in middle school, off to high school, but often as they transition even from high school into college, especially if they're going to be playing sports. These skills are opportunities for people. They're life skills. So they really provide what you need to ensure that your student athlete is really working and gearing their mindset, getting that mindset together. So I will answer a few questions and you'll be able to get in contact with me in a variety of ways. And so we're going to kick this off. And if you have questions, you can always ask them in the chat, or you can easily send me an email or find me at elitemindslllc.com. I'm also on all of the social media platforms at Elite Minds LLC on Instagram, at Elite Minds on Twitter. You can find me there, or even on Facebook at Elite Minds LLC. So I look forward to just an opportunity to share with you this evening. We'll probably take about 15, maybe even 20 minutes of your time. This will be recorded and it'll be on the social media pages for Calvary, specifically to them. So with further ado, again, this is Robert Price, owner of Elite Minds LLC. I'm going to share with you just a little bit about myself, but that way you'll have a good understanding of who I am and why Chad Griffin at Calvary and the athletic board decided to hire me to consult with the coaches, specifically working with your student athletes, and then providing other opportunities at Calvary specifically for the whole student population. So I have been a mental performance consulting service, working with professionals, allowing them opportunities just to exceed their potential in every field of human endeavor. And I've been doing this now since 2000. So that's 21 years for some of you that are out there. So it's been a long time. And so what I've been able to do is that I have understood over time that our brain is working together as a team. And so as a graduate student in 2000, I founded Elite Minds LLC and really began at that moment working with a lot of elite tennis players and really understanding how are experts different from novices, those who are beginning. And so there's a lot of research around how the brain actually changes over time, but also a lot of research what makes people different from being a novice versus being a professional. And so I have an opportunity to share all of that expertise with you while working independently with you or individually with you. So as an expert in applying mental skills and techniques that cultivate the mental and emotional strength necessary to strive and thrive in an era of overwhelming demands and persistent conflict. All of our student athletes are faced with those demands because, again, there is a lot to do, right? We have school, we have our social life, and then we add sport to that mix. And so myself as a three-sport athlete, growing up in high school, I understand the pressures that are there just to be an athlete, but also more importantly, to really be able to do all of those things extraordinarily well. So my abilities come from being able to work with a variety of clients in various settings. And some of those include soldiers here at Fort Stewart and Hunter, but all over the world. But more importantly, also the NBA or NFL, United Soccer League, the PGA, the NCAA athletes in multiple, a variety of schools and colleges. I've had opportunities to work with junior golfers, professional golfers, gymnasts, hockey players. I mean, you name it. I've had an opportunity, been very blessed to be able to work with a variety of athletes in pretty much any sport that you can name. Some of the work that I have done that brought me to this area literally was to work in the United States Army for our soldiers here and our Air Force. And so I've had the opportunity to do that work. And now in private practice, I've been able to work with that same population, but also expand out into all of the different fields of athletics as I had done, as I mentioned to you, for over now the last 20 years. So one of the things that I always like to share with folks is this. Our brains and our mind has a capacity to actually drive the things that we think. And once we start to understand that and start to really be able to create a game plan to address that, that's when we can actually start to see ourselves being able to perform consistently great in the face of stress. And so what I like to do is I always like to just kind of get us started with the same framework, at least sharing with you how I think and why I think what I'm thinking. Because this way we will be able to communicate specifically around how do we do what we do. And so on the screen, I will get ready to share just a slide that allows you to see specifically how we go about doing this. And so how do we actually think? I mean, for every one of us, we know that there are events that happen. And because those events happen, we have our own interpretation of those events, our own thoughts. Those things that we think because of the event, they simply drive our feelings and our emotions. They drive our physical state. All of this comes from the things that we think. Ultimately, those things that we think affect our feelings, our emotions, our physical state, and they impact our performance. This is what people recognize, is that they know that events happen and a performance is impacted, but they're not really sure of how or why that happens. And it really does happen for a lot of people in a lot of different ways. And so really what I like to do is to get this framework, get this baseline for everyone so that they can start to understand that it is actually the things that I'm thinking that is impacting my performance, because our performance is impacted by how we feel and what we do. And so once we start to untangle some of this, we start to understand how it's important and why it's so important for us to come up with a mental game plan, just like we have a game plan for the sport that we play. Because once we have that mental game plan, we know that in the face of setbacks, we'll have a plan. When failure happens, we'll have a plan. When success happens, we'll have a plan. When we're winning or when we're losing, we will have a mental plan. And so what I've been able to glean from the coaches at Calvary is that all of the student athletes really have a desire to be successful. But more importantly, they desire to be consistently great at what it is that they do. And the only way to do that actually is to make sure that we're taking care of that physical side, skill development and acquisition, and also the mental side. How do we have mental game plans for our success when things are going really well, and obviously when things are not going as planned? We want to be able to build and bring resilient athletes, not only on the court or on the field, but also in the classroom, because we recognize that failure is absolutely going to happen. And if we're not failing forward, then we're really maybe not trying as hard as we thought we could or should do. So I really like to give this baseline. This really allows us to see, again, we have these events that happen. Everyone experiences sometimes, and many times, especially on a team, the same event. The game is happening. The event is occurring. Practice is going on. We all are experiencing that. As a collective team, we have our independent or individual interpretations of that said event. And those thoughts will drive the feelings and emotions and those physical states for each and every athlete and as a collective team, which ultimately will impact the performance. So working with coaches, it's all about being able to help them understand that if I can have a collective thought, a collective understanding or interpretation of this event, then I, as the coach, will actually be able to have a fingerprint on the feelings and emotions and the physical state of the whole team, ultimately to impact the performance. That's going to take some work, but it does and can happen as we build better teams. So another piece to this is this. Once we understand that it is what we think and how we think that impacts our performances, we can now start to understand how do we start figuring out the skills necessary for us to be successful at doing what it is that we do. And so oftentimes when I'm sitting and working with athletes and families, they're always asking many of those questions about, well, how do I build confidence? And how do I set goals for myself? Or maybe how do I perform when I'm anxious or have, some school challenges or family challenges? How am I able to be a better performance player versus a practice player? These are all things that we're able to actually start to, come up with solutions, mental solutions, so that way we're actually able to build the confidence that we need. We're able to actually set goals that are effective, allow our brains to actually think more effectively and in sync with what we're trying to accomplish. I mean, if we do that, then we will be consistent at what we're doing. Our enjoyment for our sport will absolutely increase. And then those skills that we're learning out on the field will be able to transition and transfer into the classroom and in general into our lives as well. And it just feels good to be great. We talk about consistent greatness. We're not really just being good. We're actually trying to go from being good to great, but being good to great consistently. And we do that by ensuring that we actually address the mental side of our sport, of our game. Anytime that I work with athletes or a team or coaches or individuals in general, I always ask them what percent of what it is that they do is mental. And many times that percentage is at minimum 50% or higher. And if that percentage is 50% or higher, and we're not actually spending 50% of our time working on the mental game, then you can see how much room for growth we actually have. And so I hear that often. And so I really have an opportunity to be able to actually create game plans to work on that other 50% or 30% or 50% or 49% or whatever that percentage is for you. But to understand that if we do not have a plan specifically to work that mental side of the game, then we're leaving that much percentage of our success to chance. And no professional athlete that I've ever worked with wants to leave anything up to chance. And so we have an opportunity to change this culture, even at Calvary, where we're actually able to do the things that we need to do in order to make sure that our student athletes are consistently great at what it is that they do, because they have a plan. And we can do that by ensuring all of the mental skills that are necessary for them to be successful. One of the things that I love to write about is understanding about where did we start? How do we get there? Is this even possible? And we know this from history is that every sport since is beginning now to really start looking at how do you actually build this mental toughness? How do you make sure athletes are resilient? How do you make sure that athletes are able to sustain and withstand when pressure comes or when a failure actually happens? And commentators in every sport mention it much more now than just a few years ago, no matter what you're watching. I mean, in every sport, there's some kind of conversation around the mental game. But oftentimes people do not understand, how do I actually build that up? Is it just something that happens naturally, or does it just come because it just shows up? And the reality is this, is that I'm actually going to be here to help answer those big questions, when it comes to mental toughness and resilience. And so, how will we impact our mental training truly has an impact on your athlete's performance. So I'm so excited to be able to do this and go through this journey with you together. I think that it's going to be a fantastic partnership and an opportunity for us to really, really be successful. And one thing that I thoroughly enjoy is this. I thoroughly understand who has been successful in the past. A lot of sports psychology, a lot of mental performance coaching, a lot of positive psychology comes from looking at people who have been successful before. So we look at those trailblazers, and the difference between you and myself and other successful people is that they have already done it, right? Someone who has already paved the way has already done this. And fortunately, we have an opportunity to take advantage of this. I've worked with athletes for over 20 years, so we have an opportunity to actually dig into those elite athletes' brains, figure out what success they've had in this mental performance, and actually begin to use all of those skills. And I'm still refining my formula. But I love sharing with you the science behind their successes. I mean, successful people have been able to overcome the same hurdles that you will likely have to overcome in order to actualize your dreams. And so we know this. And so we want to be able to connect with these people, as they are an invaluable tool that will really help you accomplish your dreams. And so I've had the opportunity to walk inside of the ropes, is what I say, with many professional athletes, and be able to share those specific skills, those specific science behind their success with you. So that way you don't have to go out and search for them. I will be able to bring that information directly to you. The other exciting thing about that is by looking at sometimes biographies, right? Or looking even at, now we have social media platforms, and finding other colleagues that I work with that are key in my industry to help understand the overall mindset Those are all absolute avenues that we can go through in order to make sure that we are looking at those who have come before us. And we might ask ourselves, well, where do we actually start? I mean, how do we start developing that grit that is necessary for this mental toughness to actually begin to take root? And says, if you have decided to quit in a tough situation, then it's time to start reevaluating our very own core beliefs. What do we believe? I mean, trailblazers have been in this exact situation, so we must take notice. I always share with folks that Thomas Edison, took, I don't know how many experiments, but at least over 1,000 opportunities before the light bulb had began to actually exist. And so we recognize that we are going to make mistakes. We are actually going to fail over time. But mental toughness in and of itself is developed in the willingness to sacrifice to complete a particular task. So no matter how small or big it is, we know that elite performers do not skip opportunities or opt for shortcuts. They begin to develop this type of mental attitude. And so we will be working on that. We will be helping athletes transition into having the right mental attitude so that way they don't begin to sacrifice for that particular task, whether it's going to practice, whether it's watching game film, or whether it's doing extra outside of our sport specifically. And we can easily mimic this by being committed and willing to take the necessary sacrifices in meeting the goals that we set for ourselves that will help launch our success. I mean, we get to ask questions about additional skills that I need to adopt and what do I currently have? And so I use a mental skills assessment in order to figure out, well, where are we now? Where do we need to go? And how are we going to get there? So this requires some work. And so we may have to spend an extra hour or two. But the reality of it is that's what's necessary for us to be successful. It's like studying for a test. And there is really no excuse or no reason for us, if there's anything that we're trying to do to the better of our ability, that we can spend a little bit of extra time or get a little bit of extra impact out there. And so we know this, for decades, the mystery of peak performance was actually unsolved. Many times when I start with coaches, they start to say that I coach mental skills, which is very true. But we also know that science has been able to redefine and define actual pathways for athletes to go from being good to great. I mean, these are some questions that often are often asked of me many, many times. One is coaches, athletes, and trainers all want to know this. They say, why do some athletes reach their potential and others don't? As a parent, you may be asking that for yourself. Maybe you were an athlete, or now you're asking that of your own children. Then we ask ourselves, so why do some athletes crave challenges and others kind of shy away when challenges come? Another question is always about, why do some athletes crumble under pressure while others are thriving? That's absolutely a great question. Another one is, why do some athletes bounce back from failure and others implode? And so these four questions specifically now can be solved. They can be absolutely answered. I mean, as far as reaching their potential and others don't, there's a mental formula that we put into play to allow people to actually reach their potential. Oftentimes, it's what I shared earlier, is that there is at many times 50% of whatever sport is mental, and we're not intentionally training that. We're not intentionally going after that mental side of the game. And so we're leaving that up to chance. And so that doesn't allow our athlete to reach the potential that it is that they have. And so we really want to be able to allow them the opportunity to do that. And we actually now, with Calvary, being able to really go above and beyond and actually be a trailblazer in this area and give the student athletes an opportunity to actually intentionally train the mental side of their game. So we will be able to help many more athletes reach their potential. Also, that question of why do some athletes crave challenges and others shy away? The journey towards the champion mindset allows us to do that. It really gives us the opportunity to see that I might be have a fixed mindset, but we're really trying to get from being a fixed mindset person all the way over here to having a growth mindset, because that growth mindset is absolutely going to crave those challenges. They're actually going to want those new challenges to come aboard. The other piece is, why do some athletes crumble under pressure while others thrive? Oftentimes, we just don't plan for pressure. We don't plan for failure. Oftentimes when I'm working with my professional athletes, now they recognize that the first thing that we're talking about is a failure plan. And so no one wants to talk about failure, but the reality is that in every sport and everything that we do, there is going to be a good portion of what we do that is considered to be failure or not up to our standard. And so we plan for that. We actually create a plan for that. So that way, when pressure shows up, we actually won't be able to crumble because we have a plan for it. When our brains are clicking and we know that we have plans, we're able to kind of keep it moving. We're able to absorb things. And now we're able really to do what we really want to do, which is thrive at the right time. The other one is, why do some athletes bounce back from these failures and others implode is, again, that failure plan. We make sure that failure plan, and we talk about that. We know that there's going to be failure that's going to exist. We know that's going to happen. And so we want to make sure that at all costs that we're preparing and planning for it. Oftentimes when I work with coaches, I talk to them about creating failure in their training, right? So if you're a coach and you're really trying to, help them understand what is it like to be in the game circumstance, and it's hard to do that. Well, what we do is we actually plan for failure in practice. And so now we start to create those opportunities for them so that they begin to see exactly how they're going to respond when pressure and when those circumstances, those challenges come their way. So those are some of the pieces that we will be beginning to discuss and talk through, but also how we will be able to go directly from working with just not only the coaches at Calvary, but also independently with all the athletes and teams that are there as well. One of the cool opportunities that each student athlete will have is being able to take a mental skills assessment at no cost to them. Also, they will be able to receive a monthly mental game or a mental journey with me, and there is some cost to that, but there are some opportunities that student athletes individually or independently will be able to work directly with myself. And so I really am looking forward to athletes and parents in jest as well to really be able to wonder, how do I know more about my mental game? How do I actually, work with my struggling athlete or my struggling mental aspects to my game? And so in order to do that, again, I need to make sure that athletes improve their mental game, and we do that by taking assessments. And we do that to make sure that we can do that. That assessment actually is found on my website at elitemindsllc.com. If you're out there listening and you want to go there and actually begin to start that process on your own, or have your athlete begin that process. And so those are some of the pieces that we will be working through and walking our student athletes through there at Calvary. You can ask your coaches about when they're meeting with me independently, or when I'll be coming out to work with their teams and all of those things at the same time. So I really am excited about this opportunity, and I really am looking forward to you all journeying with me as we are not only being intentional about the mental side of the game, but actually really going to be effective around that. We are not going to say that our student athletes have not trained appropriately. We won't say that they won't be able to reach their potential. We actually have a game plan, a mental game plan in place to actually reach and teach and coach that other 50%, specifically if you believe that to be the case, if not more, for their athletes. And so the exciting opportunities are abound there at Calvary, and I'm really looking forward to the opportunity to be able to share that 20 years of experience with you. If you have any questions, you can always ask them either in the chat, or you can ask them on the Facebook or YouTube anytime. And so again, my website is available to you. If you need anything from Robert, I appreciate it. I look forward to working with you in the near future. Again, you can check me out on my website at www.elitemindslllc.com, or you can even email me at robert@elitemindslllc.com if you have specific questions geared for you, your family, and your own specific student athlete. So again, I look forward to doing this. We will do this again. We will have these as we wrap through the school year, through spring sports, at least once a month, to allow opportunities for folks to jump in and ask some specific questions. So I really look forward to that. And again, I really want to say a big shout out to your athletic director, Chad Griffith, who is really looking for opportunities to grow the student athletes at Calvary, and the athletic department and the athletic board, who also agreed to this opportunity for your student athletes. And so we're really looking forward to doing this in the future. With that, I truly appreciate your time. I want you to have a wonderful evening. This will be recorded and placed on the Calvary Facebook page, but also on any of my social media outlets on Facebook or on my YouTube channel. So I look forward to working with you individually or as a team or a family. Again, this is Robert Price, CEO of Elite Minds LLC. Have a wonderful night.